Okay, so we're going to do some variety of different Java structures to be aware of. In this case, I've created a project called Java Structures, and today what I'd like to cover is doing the case switch structure. So for that, I'm going to create a class, a new Java class for this Java Structures project, and we're going to call this the case switch example. Okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and do the public static main. So this is just going to be a console application. We're not going to get too fancy with it. If you wanted to make it an application that uses Swing or some other component, feel free to do what you need to do for that. One of the things we're going to do is we're going to use a random number generator. And for that, we need to import Java util like so. And then inside of here, we're going to go ahead and create our case structure. All right. So we're going to create a string, and this is actually going to insult the user. So we create a variable for it. It's going to be sort of the backhanded compliment. And then we're going to generate a random number. So we need a random number generator. So random is a class that allows us to create an object that can then produce random output. So we're just going to call it rand for short, and we're going to make it equal to a new random object. Okay, so this is called instantiation. We're just creating an object that can then generate some random numbers. Then we're going to create an integer, and we're going to call this we'll call it randint for a random integer. And you'll note the random objects have a lot of different classes related, or a lot of different methods related to it. We're going to use nextInt. And in here, we're going to pass it 3, which is going to select a 0, a 1, or a 2. So it's picking from a random list, starting at 0, including 3 different integers. And there we have it. Okay, so we don't know what number it's going to generate, but we need to now create a structure that will help us compare what that integer is to different possible scenarios called cases. So we do switch, and we put rand in. It's got to be an integer for the case structure to work. Now, I noticed in Eclipse, when you do the switch statement, it doesn't tab anything over. I prefer to tab it over for readability. However, you might find other people don't like to do that, so you might find a variety of different ones. So the first possible integer that could be that we're going to check for is 0. And we're going to go ahead and do a curly bracket so that we have that case right there. Notice how it doesn't indent them over. I like to have them indented. It makes it more obvious where I am, that I'm still inside of this switch structure. And so we're going to go ahead and set the insult. You look so much better than usual. Now, if it happens to be a 0 that it picks, this is what it sets insult to be. However, we got to be careful. We need to be, if we've selected it properly, we need to get out of this switch structure. And for that, we're going to break. So if you met the case, once you've done what you wanted to do, you want to break out. Now, I believe these curly brackets are not essential, and we're going to test that in a moment to see. And I'm going to proceed to do that for my other 2 possible cases. So at this point, once you've coded out your cases, case 0, case 1, case 2, note each one has a break. At the end, we want to have a catch-all. It's going to be kind of like you would do an else statement. It's called default. Now I'm going to put a little note on here. Something's wrong with this code, because if somehow it picks something other than one of these three possible cases, that is a problem. And so we're just doing that as just a just in case kind of thing. This is going to be much more important if you have the user select something and they're going to type something. You want to be ready for the possibility it's something else. Okay. Anyway, so there we have that, and let's go ahead and we're gonna do the output now. So now notice where I'm putting it: system.out println, and we're just gonna put insult. Notice the switch structure begins here, ends here, and each of these curly brackets are for the different cases. So one of the reasons why I make it indented, because I want to know that this switch structure, everything is indented. We don't do any output until after we've gone through this entire piece of code. Now we're going to run it and see if it works or not. And we'll have to test it a few times, testing our output. So there's one run through. Let's run it again. And as long as we keep getting one of the random ones, you can see that things are working. All right, makes sense? So you're going to want to test that out, and then I'm going to zoom out so you can see all the code in its in one view. So let me do that real quick. It's hard to get everything in one view, so there's the import. Make sure you have that, and let's just scroll down. Once you're in the main method, it should there's the whole code. If you need to pause it and take a look at it. One of the things I'm going to do right now is I'm going to test out some of the theories I had before. What happens if we don't break out of these? And so I'm just going to comment them out. It's very common programmers will do is they'll comment out pieces of code, and then they can bring the comments back. You can just take them off, the comments off. And so notice what happened. When there's no break, it gives me that default. Something's wrong with this code. Well, the thing that's wrong is we didn't do a break. So let's go ahead and take out one of these and try it again. So no matter what I do, it's always going to end up on case 2 because there's no breaks in here. So you absolutely need the breaks. So always, always, always put a break. The next thing I want to test is, do we actually need those curly brackets or not? And my theory is that it's just for readability. Let's run it. And every time I run it, it comes up with another one. So in this case, it's for it would just for organization, readability, that kind of a thing. And it's not essential for this structure. Okay. So it's your choice. Whatever you do, you better be consistent on that. Now I'm going to try something out here and just one more test. What happens if there's something other than a break statement? Will that still work without running an error? Yeah. So yeah, with this structure, curly brackets inside are not essential. And if you like the way it looks that way without the curly brackets, maybe that's what you want to do. But do keep that indentation. That's going to be very handy. Okay? So I'm going to leave you with that code there. So just as a recap, I just want to remind you, in order to do the switch statement, you don't have to have it randomly selected. The user could identify it. But whatever we put in there that becomes the case, it has to be an integer. Only works with the integers. Okay. And again, we don't have to do the curly brackets. It's a good idea to make sure each line of code is on its own. Each instruction is on its own line. And of course, I did this just as a test. If I were to leave it If I were to code it, this is how I would probably code it. Good luck. Code like the wind, young ones. Code like the wind.